for NTV News Update. My name is Debarl, Inea. Now, the International Court of Justice has delayed the hearing of the maritime dispute case between Kenya and Somalia for a third time. This is after Kenya successfully urged the court to postpone the hearing due to the current coronavirus pandemic that has dogged its economy.
Kenya has succeeded in securing another delay to the hearing of the maritime border dispute with Somalia at the International Court of Justice. Kenya successfully urged the court to delay the hearing, arguing that its economy was under threat due to the negative impact of the current COVID-19 pandemic. Kenya argued that its plan now is to urgently defend itself economically. According to ICJ, the case that was scheduled to commence on 8th next month will now be heard from 15th to 19th March 2021 due to the exceptional circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic. Somalia government has confirmed to respect the latest decision of the court. For years now, Kenya and Somalia have been at loggerhead over the pie-shaped slice of the sea separating the two nations, to which each lays a claim and which is believed to contain sizable oil and gas deposits.
The Council of Governors has recommended that the Community Health Services Bill be withdrawn because the county governments cannot afford the submissions. Speaking during a meeting between the Senate Standing Committee on Health, Chair of the Council of Governors, Wycliffe Oparanya, said that the bill raises unsustainable expectations on the part of the workers, which have the potential of having huge financial implications. The Community Health Service Bill aims to create a legal basis for the effective delivery of integrated, comprehensive and quality community health services at the county level.
If you did your survey well, you will find that these volunteer workers, most of them get facilitation, but that facilitation comes from different well-wishers. I've told you, like in Kakamega here, we have about 10,000 of them. Obviously, if you come up with now legislation to recognize them and to use the word workers, then you are giving me a responsibility as a governor now to recognize these people and pay them, which I'm saying I will not manage at all. And that's why the essence of having these people was to volunteer.
Right, so just want to let you in on the press that is ongoing right now from the Jubilee Party, the Tanga side. And of course, right now we can see also Didmas Baraza is on the mic. Let's just cross over there and listen to what they're saying.
The National Assembly. This nefarious scheme shall be undertaken using the now familiar tactics of intimidation, blackmail, and extortion of judicial officers and members of the National Assembly. Threats of recall and removal, threats to life, withdrawal of personal security, targeted harassment of family members, including spouses and children, are among the many dangerous and illegal means that security agencies intend to use to achieve their ends. There are also arrangements to apprehend members of parliament of fabricated charges by the Director of Criminal Investigations, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and the Kenya Revenue Authority in order to wear out the leaders by shuttling them between the courts and police stations in the name of trumped-up charges. The intention is to inflict immense stress and anxiety on affected persons to the point of exhaustion and to inflict actual harm upon others. Some members of parliament have reported credible threats to their lives to the DCI, yet nothing was done by the way of meaningful investigations. As if this is not enough, we are aware of plans to eliminate certain members of parliament in retaliation and as a warning to others over their political views. An elite squad was recently disbanded by the DCI after details of plans to harm political leaders leaked out. You will recall that reports of threats to the life of the Deputy President have never been investigated for nearly a year. Instead, there has been a lot of diversionary activity and intimidation. As part of the cover-up, one Mr. Dennis Itumbi was arrested and detained at length, only to be charged with obscure and irrelevant offenses. To date, there have been no credible investigation into the veracity of the Hotel Lamada assassination plot claims against the Deputy President. This country only recently emerged from troubled history of vicious impunity, unresolved political murders, and outright assassination in pursuit of corrupt political and other ends. The institutions we look to for protection against violations and excesses are being captured, cannibalized, compromised, and commandeered to reverse into a terrible past. We are being led...
That is a presser there from Parliament, from the Jubilee Party side of Tanga. Of course, we are doggedly following that story, and our reporter Vincent Odor will give us more details much later in the course of the day. We want to cross over now to Mombasa, Kilifi, where we know also the COVID-19 has heavily impacted the area, and our reporter Kevin Mutai is over there to tell us what is happening right now as far as KEMRI and the COVID-19 research is concerned, to just run us through the rigors of the testing that they undertake over there. Kevin, good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon to you, Debarl, and we are joining the broadcast from the Kenya Medical Research Institute, and also known as the Center for Geographic Medicine Research here in Kilifi County. And it has been a facility that has been on the front line testing COVID-19 cases, not only here in the coast region, but of course also giving research, or rather conducting research on how and proper mitigation to undertake in terms of fighting the pandemic. And at this facility there are over 60 scientists, and of course, as you can see, those are some of the equipment that are being used in the fight against COVID-19. Here testing is normally done, and I understand that 800 and even over test samples that are normally being channeled through this facility for testing before being taken to the Ministry of Health for further direction. But of course, here let me just quickly engage Dr. Sam Kinyanjui to perhaps maybe help us put into perspective some of the key areas that we need to understand when it comes to the fight against the pandemic. You're live on NTV. Maybe perhaps just tell us how many samples do you receive in a day, and where are the majority of these samples coming from?
So normally we receive about 800, sometimes up to 1,000 samples. The majority of those samples are coming from Mombasa County, but then we also have a number of samples coming from Kilifi, samples coming from Kwale, and now because of the border testing, we have samples coming from Taita Taveta County.
And then again, there's a lot of conversation that has been going on about, the underfunding of this facility. Are you well equipped with proper reagents and equipment to conduct the testing?
As you can see, when you pan around with the camera, we do have a lot of capacity. This is a capacity that has been built over many years, and when you talk about capacity, we are referring to having human expertise. So we have scientists who were trained and who have been doing research in other diseases, malaria, bacterial diseases, but also viral infections, including other forms of coronavirus. And at the same time, we're talking about having the right type of equipment. You can see that testing COVID is not a straightforward activity. It's not like having one of those big sticks where you just dip something and it changes color. You can see that there is a very long process involving multiple stages, and at each of those stages you require highly specialized equipment and highly specialized expertise. With regards to reagents, we are receiving some reagents from KEMRI, but we have also had to mobilize reagents that we had already acquired for other research that we were doing.
And the government?
And in terms of funding and support from the government, yes, we do receive funding from the government, but at the same time, we receive quite a large amount of funding from other funders, particularly in this center will receive a lot of funding from the Wellcome Trust of the UK, but we also have funding from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And across Kemri, there are other funders, including JICA and Walter Reed and other big funders.
And then again, maybe perhaps as we wind up, is there a possibility of maybe coming up with a vaccine to fight this pandemic?
We want to believe, because as scientists, obviously, we go in with a lot of hope that we'll be able to develop an intervention, and we want to believe that a vaccine will be found soon. The testing process itself takes long because you have to ensure that it works, but at the same time that it is safe to use in human beings, and that takes multiple number of stages. But we are hoping that we are going to find a vaccine, because there is a very large number of institutions and researchers and research groups that are looking for it. I believe right now there is almost 21 experimental vaccines at different stages of being developed. So we hope that by throwing so much resource, expertise, and interest at this disease, that we'll be able to come up with a vaccine quickly.
Okay, thank you. Debarl, that was Dr. Sam Kinyanjui, who's one of the lead scientists who are undertaking, testing of COVID-19 in this facility. But of course, there's a lot more that we've seen from here, and I'm sure that we'll have a very compiled and a detailed story of what those who are in charge here are doing as towards contributing towards the fight of the pandemic. Back to you, Debarl.
Indeed, Kevin Mutai, and we do hope, yes, that we'll find that particular vaccine. We commend our experts there for that good, commendable, salutary effort they are putting forth. Tea farmers in Embu are seeking for consideration from government in regards to the new proposed tea regulations that they say may deprive them of a market for their produce. The farmers have pleaded with the government to amend the document and do away with the regulation requiring that tea factories they supply green leaf to have at least a nucleus of 250 hectares.
As the COVID-19 pandemic continues, farmers at the Mungania Tea Factory in Manyata constituency, Embu County, are leaving nothing to chance. At the entrance of the factory, they sanitize their hands thoroughly, with their produce still on their backs. This simple act gives them peace of mind that they are not only protecting their fellow farmers, but also factory staff and the integrity of the product. They, however, worry that all this may amount to naught on account of a government directive that the factory has to own at least 250 hectares of land, equivalent to 500 acres of tea bushes, in order to continue operating.
Hilo hatuwezi kukubali. Mashamba ya shareholders ndiyo mashamba ya Mungania Tea Factory Company, lakini yeye anasema iwe na title deed ya Mungania. Kweli hilo litawezekana, wakulima wenzangu? Hayo hayawezekani.
The farmers say that the government should consider their contribution and not the portion of land owned by the factory.
Tuko na difference ya 30% ya increment. Kama crop ni mingi, kama production ya majani ni mingi, inamaanisha nini katika ile soko majani inauzwa? Inamaanisha soko iko na majani mingi. Na majani sio ya Mungania, ni ya Kenya mzima.
They are optimistic that the stalemate will be resolved and that they will have their interest considered. Charity Mwangi, NTV.
Meanwhile, the Agriculture Ministry has announced some measures that will radically overhaul the tea sector while improving the earnings of small-scale tea farmers. The regulations are set to see tea brokers and KTDA relinquish some of the power that have seen them control the sector for years. Let's cross over to Kilimo House, where right now we have the CS Agriculture. This is Peter Munya also apprising us on this particular new tea regulations. Let's listen in.
They started after us. They have a functional one that sells coffee, that sells beans, that sells pulses, and it is doing extremely well. Go and Google the commodity exchange in Ethiopia, you see the volumes it tons, because they have put in place proper rules. Nobody can cut corners, and a lot of transparency in the way it is managed. That's what we want to bring, and I think we'll get there. We'll get there. Thank you very much.
CS there, Agriculture, Peter Munya, apprising the country on the new tea regulations. And of course, the CS has a banned sale of private treaty, that is direct sale of the tea, and the sale will be through the auction. And this also risks the oversupply and undersupply, according to many pundits, as far as the tea sector is concerned. Let's cross over to Zoya, where the daunting task of retrieving 5 bodies from River Zoya has finally yielded. 3 out of 5 bodies were retrieved. Family members of the deceased have been camping along River Zoya with the hope of retrieving all of them. Ruth Munyi has more on this.
It's been a long and painful experience for these families. After days of searching for their family members who drowned in River Zoya in Alego, Usonga, there is now a sigh of relief after 3 bodies were retrieved. Professional divers from Bomet County as well as locals joined in the effort to retrieve the bodies. According to family members of the affected, already 1 body has been buried. The other 2 are yet to be buried. Area residents are now putting to task the county government to support the affected families. There were claims that professional divers were demanding to be paid upfront.
Tangu hii jambo ifanyike, gavana wetu hatujaona kwa site hapa, ambaye ni represented ndiye mtu ambayo iko kwa county yake. Hajakuja, hatujaona, hatujasikia ripoti yoyote. Tungeomba jamani, wakitusikia mahali popote, wakuje waomboleze na hii jamii, wangeweza kuja wasikie vyenye watatusaidia.
Kisii County has reported its first case of COVID-19. The Governor, James Ongwae, reported that the patient from Bobasi sub-county had traveled from Tanzania into the country through the Namanga border. The 38-year-old man was working at a hotel in Tangiri before traveling to the country on 11th May. The public then alerted the county's public health officers and disease surveillance officers, who acted immediately and placed the said person into forceful quarantine at the Kenya Medical Training College Isolation Center in Kisii. 14 people who came into contact with the patient are being quarantined at the Kisii Teaching and Referral Hospital.
Actually taken on the 15th of May, the next day to Kisumu. They came back today, this morning. Immediately we were told he was moved from the containment center to the isolation center. We also then moved very quickly to Bobasi and identified the people that he had immediately dealt with. So far, 14 people that were identified are already. They were brought by the entire COVID response team of the county. They were brought to the containment center, the 14 of them. By 2 o'clock, we knew around 9 in the morning, by 2 o'clock, the 14 people were already in the containment center. There are 3 others that were also identified, and the security team and the entire COVID team, including our enforcement officers, are looking for those 3 so that they can be brought in.
Time for us to take a station break. Don't go away. Much more coming up on the other side of a break. See you then.
Remember to include the person's disability if and when reporting cases of COVID-19 involving a person with disability. National Council for Persons with Disabilities. Disability rights are human rights.
Sonadol Extra imetengenezwa kwa njia spesheli kupambana haraka na maumivu ya kichwa, mwili na hata meno. Sonadol Extra, hakika maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
Pembe Flour, your most trusted quality brand for over 3 decades, has a new look now. This new pack is available in all leading supermarkets and outlets. It's still the same flour. Great taste, so you can cook and bake all you love with Pembe Flour. Pembe yangu ni poa.
Welcome back. Now, as the coronavirus pandemic bites and makes life harder for many Kenyans, a police officer in Eastlands has purposed to use her networks in the area to lessen the burden for some residents, especially women and children. The officer provides them with face masks and water for free. Here is our story.
The coronavirus pandemic has come with its own share of challenges for different people in the country. The government has called on well-wishers to come in and help where they can. For Helen Mideva, an assistant superintendent of police in Kayole, her helping hand comes in the form of aiding women and children in Eastlands. For the last 5 days, Helen and her fellow officers from the different police stations and police posts in Kayole have offered their services of helping residents get water, and they literally help them take it to their houses as a water shortage bites in the area.
Ndio tukuja hapa leo, tumekuwa tukikuja but always in civilian. Kwa sababu tulitambua tunafaa kusaidia kufight COVID-19 na tukajiuliza tutafight aje tukiwa tuko ofisi. Na hawa warembo sio mimi peke yangu. Sasa ndio tukasema tuwezi shinda tunaambia watu atikafi tuanze jioni kusukuma watu waingie kwa nyumba. Tukaamua tunaweza reach watu, tuongee na wao mahali penye wako na need. Na tukaona need ya watu ya Obama huku ni maji.
A borehole sunk in the estate has played a key role in quenching the thirst of locals who are in the process of enhancing their relationship with the police.
Polisi wa Kayole wametusaidia na mtu anaitwa Mtua ametupea maji karibu wiki moja na tumekuwa tukichota maji bure.
Sio watu wako hivyo, lakini kwa leo nimefeel wako kabisa ni binadamu kama sisi, wako na roho kama raia.
The officers have been banking on their relations with the business community to ease the burden on the residents. The officers led by Helen have also been supplying masks where they can to residents as calls to keep the virus at bay intensify. There are police officers who have instead been accused of using unorthodox ways to enforce the wearing of masks as they harass residents in their jurisdiction. Kennedy Muredhi, NTV.
Let's start the crack now to international news, where Burundi went into polls on Wednesday in a tense elections to replace their long-ruling president, with the opposition crying foul over arrest and intimidation as little attention is paid to the coronavirus pandemic. The election comes after 5 years of turmoil sparked by President Pierre Nkurunziza's bid, I should say, for the third term, which unleashed unrest that left at least 1,200 people dead and saw 400,000 flee the country. More than 5 million registered voters are being asked to choose between Nkurunziza's hand-picked heir and frontrunner, 52-year-old General Evariste Ndayishimiye, the main opposition competitor, Agathon Rwasa, and 5 other candidates. This includes positions for parliamentarians and local councillors who appoint their members of the Senate. Burundians waited in long queues without observing the social distancing rule amid COVID-19 pandemic. The election took place without international observers, while social media such as WhatsApp, Facebook and Twitter were cut off. Lesotho's former finance minister, Mokeitsi Majoro, has been sworn in as prime minister a day after the resignation of Thomas Tabane, who quit after being accused of conspiring to murder his wife. The Southern African Kingdom was plunged into crisis after the June 2017 killing, and pressure had built relentlessly for 80-year-old Tabane to step down. On Tuesday, he confirmed his resignation, clearing the way for 58-year-old Majoro, a seasoned economist. Tabane attended the swearing-in ceremony at the Royal Palace of King Letsi III, handing Majoro a copy of the Constitution to formally signal the transfer of power. We buckle down to sports, where Ugandan club Vipers SC have been declared champions of the country's 2019-2020 Premier League following a decision by the nation's football federation to end the domestic football season. The Federation of Uganda Football Association, FUFA, took the decision in light of the disruptions to the season occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. The federation applied a rule that more than 75% of the league's games had been played by the time the season was suspended on March 18th. Vipers SC topped the table with 54 points from 25 matches, while Kampala City Capital Authority, KCCA FC, was second on 50. Meanwhile, Maroons, Proline and Toro